So, surrender to the flow. I think that this is talking about being the person of least resistance. Um, or refusing to resist a situation, because the Six of Swords can't talk about, can't talk about resistance, can't talk about moving away from something and being, it could also talk about being sneaky, moving in a very, not a deceitful way, but moving in a way that's careful of the actions that you're taking, right? Not to either cause much attention or to, give away some sort of, motive, or give away some sort of action, to say the very least. Now, the thing that I find interesting about this reading is that your underlying energy is the world, and you have this card coming up, the Seven of Swords coming up as your best path to follow. Now, I know I'm kind of bouncing around for a second, but I usually like to do like a quick overall before we start dissecting it individual card after individual card. But the thing that I've noticed is that there's a lot of things that are coming to its conclusion, and instead of, being excited about a new beginning, which I think some of you guys are, I think a lot of you guys are, a lot of you guys are also finding it difficult to, to kind of embrace the new path that's coming in, embrace the, the evolving, lifestyle that you guys may have, right? And it could be for the better, it could be for the worse. It's just that it seems like it's hard to, to grasp, not reality, but it's really hard to figure out what further is needed from your situation or what isn't, so you can be able to move on, if that makes sense. And I think the situation is this. I think is that you don't need, I don't think you need to do anything because surrender to flow is coming up. I think it's just more of just like going, just be you, just continue to go down the path. But the thing, considering that the Seven of Coins is here, is like, there's a lot of overthinking that I could potentially see, but at the same time, there's also a lot of, accounting for one's worth and one's value, and that's what you guys are doing now. So in the past, you guys have the Lovers here. The Lovers does talk about just, it does, in my opinion, talk about accepting what your heart is trying to tell you. Listening to what your heart's trying to say instead of trying to let your brain override because you're not comfortable with what it is that your emotions are trying to tell you, right? Because sometimes, like a lot of us, especially as air signs, we don't like to have our emotions be, like, rule us. We don't like that. If it does, we kind of, separate or just, try to distance ourselves from either the situation or from ourselves to kind of get our brain back into, command mode or authoritarian mode. And the problem with that is that it never changes its mind when we do that kind of behavior, right? It always gets a little stronger. Like whatever we want rather, and we refuse refuse ourselves to get that. What happens, right? That kind of amplifies. It gets worse. And I'm not trying to say that the Lovers is like saying, hey, don't deny your feelings because you're going to regret not doing it because it's going to amplify and it's going to get even more chaotic. But more of like, this is about, not just about a soulmate connection or a perfect union, or not necessarily a perfect union, but the union between two people that, that really react to a very strong connection between the two. It's more of like your brain allowing yourself to feel and just accepting what you're feeling and figuring what to do about that versus trying to come up with all kinds of reasons either not to feel the way you do, not to address how you feel. Right? Again, with the surrender to the flow being the heart of your reading, it's about, not letting yourself kind of break the chain of process, of progress, whatever. Because it looks like to me that even from the very beginning, you try to be very logical. And I think some of you guys have even succeeded. And there's nothing wrong with being logical, but when it comes to what your heart wants, and especially when it comes to reevaluating, value, it can be very difficult because if you don't know how you value, if you don't value yourself, if you don't value your emotions, how can someone else value you, right? So it's very interesting that the Lovers comes up as the past situation because it looks like here there is not necessarily much decision making going on, but more of accepting what you want to feel, accepting the connection for what it is, right? What do you feel in this connection? Do you feel love? Do you feel passion? Do you feel excitement? You know, could this be the one? And it could, and it can't be. And it, you know, it can and it can't be, right? It's all up to you to decide that. And it's not necessarily, no one else outside of you can decide that. Now, the King of Swords is not necessarily a bad card to get here, considering that you are an air sign, Libra. It doesn't, you know, it could mean that you're mastered the, you know, the mind aspect, the logic, you know, the belief, the morals, the communication. You are stellar at this, perhaps, today. Or, you know, perhaps you see yourselves as the only person that's able to communicate adequately about a certain situation, or to completely understand where you're coming from and what you're feeling. I feel like with the King of Swords here is very much the opposite of being detached and not connecting with your emotions. It's mostly, in my opinion, understanding exactly how you feel and being able to articulate that, and also to being able to defend that and being able to stand your ground with it with the King of Swords. You know, and I could also feel like you guys have also, you know, this relationship that may have manifested itself in the past is definitely solidified. You see this person as your other half. You see this person as your person. And this person is good at communicating too, or they're working on the communication. And that in a way in itself is showing up as your partner, if that makes sense. Like they're presenting themselves in a way that definitely reflect upon the communication that you have exhibited. So I think that's great, right? And it's considering that right after, at the opposite side of that is the Six of Coins, the give and take card. I feel like this person is definitely at least trying their best to be the person that you need them to be. This person is definitely stepping into the energy of being your partner. And I feel like too, you're able to kind of master the mind now. You're working on that part of yourself where you're not letting your mind overwhelm you. You're understanding what, you know, you understand what each part is, you know, each part's necessary. The King of Swords, he doesn't necessarily just let his mind run rampant. He also, you know, he's not completely detached. He's not completely heartless, but he'll do things that are necessary for himself that will seem heartless, they'll seem cold, because it's not, he's not trying to take it to a personal place. He's trying to make the best decision that he possibly can. Okay. So I like this card here. I don't see this as something bad. I see this as someone that is definitely either your partner stepping into their power, stepping into their control. I think the dynamic between you and this person is definitely love. Obviously, the Lovers is coming up here in the past to obviously establish that. The only thing that I would say about this relationship, though, is that it has gotten perhaps dry. There may be emotional stimulation, or excuse me, mental stimulation. There may be a lot more conversations. There may be a lot more, you know, things that you know, drive you to think. But I don't know if there's a lot of passion here. I don't know if there's a lot of physical connection, you know. There's not a lot of fun here. It gets serious when the King of Swords comes into play. You know, he's not about playing around. Like I said, he does not let his emotions into the situation because he wants to make the best out of the situation that he possibly can. And that's taking that situation very seriously. So whoever this is taking the situation extremely seriously. Or they're not considering the emotional aspect of the relationship. I think before there was maybe even a balance. One that was, you know, a little bit more logical, and the other one was a lot more abstract and creative, right? Or emotional, right? The logical part of that person is definitely keyed in, okay? Or, excuse me, like the other person that's more logical, the person that's more mind-oriented, that really doesn't really, you know, that really tries to articulate everything, or rather, like, tries to keep things on a very surface level. Is, you know, that kind of flow was there for a while, but now it's like the situation has gotten serious and both sides have gotten very logical, and there's not a lot of passion here. The King of Swords, it doesn't represent passion, but it doesn't mean that he won't stand by his truths and beliefs. It doesn't mean he's not, you know, he's not adamant about what he believes in. It doesn't mean that he's lackluster in any area. It's just that his focus is primarily on concepts that will benefit the both parties, you know? Now, in the future, you have the Page of Coins. And that's somebody that's coming in offering something that they believe may or may not be enough. You know, they may not have a lot, so they're giving everything that they've got. Now, I kind of get the sense that this could be like an offer of some sorts. Could be that you offer something, Libra. But how this kind of moves in is that, you know, you fall in love, the person is starting to resemble signs of being the perfect partner, or at least being the person that you want in your relationship. Either in that, or you've adapted a lot stronger morals. You've become a lot more stable in your thought processes, in your moral code, in, how you process information, how you convey that information. You've gotten better at it. You've mastered that aspect of yourself, and now something comes in because of the mastery of your skill, the mastery of your element. And something greater may come in, or some sort of temporary work may come in because someone is showing or exhibiting traits that show that they could be the best partner for you. So with all this going on, and really nothing really bad showing up, like even the King of Swords, it's like, the only problem I see here is really this like intimacy, but that's not something that can't be worked on, because the Page of Coins looks like that's the process of it. That's the beginning of working on intimacy, right? You have, the union, the understanding of feelings, so being aware of your emotions, and then understanding the necessity of being, solid in your truth, being stable in your truth, and having a person that reflects your ideal match, and then working on intimacy. So what's the issue? The Seven of Swords. The situation is saying that which is your advice, is saying that there's evasion here. There's evasion. And what does that mean? I feel like, evasion where? Well, I'm looking quite straight at the King of Swords. And the King of Swords doesn't evade things unless it's he doesn't even avoid his emotions. He understands what he feels. But there's an aspect that the King of Swords, I feel, will neglect, and willingly, especially when it comes to relationship, because he wants to make it work. And it is intimacy, and it is passion, and it is emotional, connection. And I mean, if there's nothing wrong with the King of Swords getting more information about you, trying to understand you, all those wonderful things. But the King of Swords does not put himself in a situation where he's vulnerable. Okay? And I feel like with the Seven of Swords, when you take a risk, like this is suggesting here, it does put you in a situation of vulnerability. And the King of Swords is never vulnerable. Somebody is putting up a front. No, not a front. Not a front in the sense that someone's being fake, but more of like someone is being super defensive and really on guard about what's going on. Therefore, they can't allow things good to happen or things to come into their life, especially this Page of Coins, whatever this may be for any of you guys. They're keeping this. They're defensive. They're ready to slice and dice. They're ready to be, they're ready to take on any situation seriously, and kind of protect their emotions before something beautiful could come in, right? This offer could be something that really pushes everything forward. But, considering that we have the Ace of Coins here, the Ace of Cups rather, diagonal from the Page of Coins, that to me looks like that there is a potential for, new love or some sort of small growth of intimacy between you and the person that you're currently with, if there is someone in your life. Or there could be that there's somebody that comes in to offer you something small, like a date, or maybe or maybe taking some time to really get to know each other, or maybe this is a job offer that does it. That's in the arena in which you want to pursue your happiness. Whatever that is, there is this kind of like, well, this is the way it is, and this is how I have to be in order to make sure that I'm protected and my emotions are not taken advantage of. You could be that serious, but be aware that your emotions are your emotions need nurturing and love too. And the Seven of Swords to me is saying the advice is not to resist, is to go for it, and is to take the risk. I'm gonna even clarify that one, too. I'm gonna get an extra card for that. Seven of Swords in the best path to follow. The Tower. Oh, wow. Yeah. Just go with it, fam. When the Tower comes up with the Seven of Swords, yeah, whatever risk is saying that you may need to take, it looks like it's going to change and alter your life. And with the King of Swords is that the illusion is that he is open to change. He's open to everything. He's open to all kinds of things. Yeah, he's open to things that he can control. Not that he's a narcissist, and not that he's looking to seek power from other people or exploiting other people's vulnerabilities. No, he's like, he doesn't mind other people being themselves as long as it doesn't affect himself. That's why it's so hard to communicate or change a King of Swords mind. It's because this person is not interested in changing their mind. This person is interested in truly just having a conversation, getting more information, expressing their truth, and being on their way. The only time this person has a problem with change is if it affects them. And they do not orchestrate it. Now, the problem I feel with this is that you may have a situation come up where there is an opportunity that comes in, or you present an opportunity. You go ahead and offer something to someone, but that is radically changing your life. But that's going to change the course of how things go. And it's scary because you just gotten, to a place where not only you're in your power, but you also feel like you're stable in the sense of your mind. So it's like, as soon as you get comfortable, you got a new round to go on to. You got a new world to continue. The tower's underneath here too. And it could be that this situation is an unexpected closing of a cycle, and you're not sure if you're ready to close out that cycle by beginning something new, by doing something else. But again, the cards are telling you, like, be ready to make that change, because one, it's inevitable, and two, staying where you are doesn't ever fix any situation. It doesn't really make any situation, progressively good, Now, your external energy, you have 7 of coins. Now, that's an interesting card to get, especially considering that the King of Swords is in your not your best follow, your present energy. And the 7 of Pentacles does talk about, having to, it has a lot to do with the hard work that you put in, trying to figure out exactly, what else needs to be done, trying to assess or to reevaluate what your status is, or what needs to be worked on previously or currently, with the situation you have now. With some of you guys, it may have to do with intimacy. But the 7 of coins here, as the external energy, seems like to me that it's just like you put in a lot of work, and not only are you having a hard time figuring out what else to do, but it's also you're having a hard time figuring out if this is even something that you value, right? Is something that you continue to value, or has those values changed for the good or for the better, or for the worse, right? For the good or for the worse. 7 of Swords 7 of Coins, excuse me, not 7 of Swords. 7 of Coins, to me, does talk about reflection in regards to, again, like I said, value, but it also has to do with, knowing what you've put up with and knowing what you've worked on, even though it hasn't gotten to the results that you wanted, it's still a work in progress, right? It's still a work in progress, and is there any more you can work on with this relationship? It's such an interesting card to get here. Why is the 7 of Coins coming up in the outcome? The Queen of Swords. Wow. Yeah, you've been working very hard on being either reasonable, trying to be reasonable, or trying to work with a person that's obviously your better half. Because you have the King and Queen of Swords now, so it's very clear that this is definitely regarding another person. So it seems like you guys have worked on something. Either it could have been another Libra, Gemini, or Aquarius. And it doesn't have to be the air signs itself. It could just be that this person, it's a lot more receptive. Like, it's a lot more receptive, a lot more, digestive of information than the King of Swords, in my opinion. And that pretty much means that this person doesn't necessarily give as much feedback unless asked. And I feel like you guys have been really working on either being more receptive or working on a relationship with someone that is a lot more receptive to information and not necessarily masculine in that energy, if that makes sense. So this person it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be a male or female when I say masculine or feminine. Those are just strictly energies. And when I mean masculine is the King of Swords would be more aggressive. You would be assertive, rather, not aggressive, but assertive, more direct. The Queen of Swords, she's not passive aggressive, but she will tell you straight up what's bothering her. But that's if you consult her opinion, if you consider her opinion. The King of Swords will not bother to wait for you to say anything. This person would be more assertive and tell you to his face, while the person with the Queen of Swords energy, she won't say anything until asked, until approached, until you put her in a situation where a conversation is likely to be had. She's not a person you talk at. This is someone you talk with, and you also consider her opinion as well, because she will consider yours, especially if you come to her first. And I feel like there's a lot of patience with the relationship that you're with, and the reason why it's hard for you to either continue down a certain road, especially with what you guys got going on, is probably because you're already starting out with the communication and starting to get better at it. The communication is starting to get maybe healthier, and you're having a hard time figuring out what to do about the intimacy portion if the communication is really well and you guys are coming up to a standstill. So, interesting, right? Like, it's almost like, even though you guys are still, maybe there's some things that are still needed to be worked on regarding communication, period. But the point of this whole thing is that there is so much work more to do, and it took such a long time, it took a lot of effort just to get to this point, and you still are not at at the exactly ideal situation. So it's a lot of reevaluation, figuring out what it is, what your truth is, figuring out what you're willing and what you're not willing to put up with anymore, or what you're willing to continue to push hard and have patience for. And I feel like the King of Swords is that, what I was saying before is like you're having a hard time transitioning to something new, or going on to the next topic, or going on to the next situation that needs working on, because you've already worked so hard and very hard to get to this point now where you guys are able to communicate in healthy ways. So now it's about intimacy. So now it's about connecting emotionally, or connecting at a deeper level. Your hopes and fears is the Six of Pentacles. You want to get to a place where you guys can reciprocate emotionally. You guys are wanting to reciprocate, your passions, or reciprocate, period. Like, not just communication, but again, affection, vulnerability, being able to be relied on and relying on someone else. Like, that Six of Coins is the balance card to me. Like, the card of balances. Like, the give and take. And cause and effect. And this is one of those things. I feel like you guys want a balanced situation right now, because right now it's not. Either you have to be, the head of the house, or you have to be the person that takes control, that's very assertive, that gets things done, or is aware of what's going on and starts initiating what needs to be done, or considerate of other people's needs because you consider yours. And I feel like when it comes to this Six of Coins, you guys do want a balanced relationship. You don't want it just one-sided. But in order for that to happen, there has to be less rigidness. There has to be less resistance to allowing yourself to not be vulnerable, even if it does put a lot of pressure on the other person, even if it does mean that you have to trust the other person to do those things. The biggest situation I see here with the King and Queen of Swords is not just intimacy and allowing someone in emotionally, which always connects down to one very thing that I'm going to bring up right now, is trust. The Lovers in this very beginning, like I was telling you, is about allowing your heart to just feel and learning ways to work with those feelings instead of trying to deny it, because you don't trust that emotion. You don't trust. And I feel like in the very beginning, there was a lot of, there was the ego and the heart having a back and forth conversation, either with you or this was you, between you and your loved one. And it was a hard time being vulnerable and having that trust with one another. But this person has stepped into the plate. I think this person is ready to continue to work through things. And it may be difficult, and it may take time for there to be, further development. But that's where the Queen of Swords comes up, because she's patient. She will be patient, she will listen, she will continue to communicate what needs to be communicated, but she will not assert herself if need be. I feel like the biggest thing is like, no longer asserting yourself or putting yourself in a situation where things that need to be taken care of, you just take care of yourself. Communicate what needs to be taken care of. Communicate what you need. And then let that be the continuous source of, adjusting to things. Not resisting. And I think the resistance really is to allow yourself to just be vulnerable with this person. Allow that change to come in, that they're, which is no longer resisting. Just, no longer resisting. Resisting what? Resisting to trust, or resisting to allow someone else to put, to be more assertive. It's an interesting reading, guys. Your outcome is showing the Ace of Cups. And it does talk about new love coming in. Like I said, I was talking earlier about it with the Page of Coins parallel to, it's not parallel, excuse me, vertical, what the hell? Horizontal. Oh my god, diagonal. Jesus, I had to go through all of them. Jeez. Alright. The Page of Coins being a diagonal from, okay. Being diagonal from the Ace of Coins does talk about there may, this is self-love, healing, and the beginning of emotional awareness. Okay, and I feel like that emotional awareness does come from a time or place of looking deeply at a situation, looking further and looking closely at a situation, because the Page of Coins does talk about looking at the details of something. It looks at the details of something. But I also feel like because the Ace of Cups is coming up in your outcome, and the Page of Coins is coming up in your future, is that this is something that, yes, maybe something small, not much to offer, but it is a very big step in a direction where it does call for emotional, like I said, emotional awareness. Okay, and I feel like somebody may come in to offer you a new opportunity at love, or offer you something emotional, offer you something that comes from the heart. It's big. Or it could be you that does it, because you are okay with, or you have to start somewhere, right? With being okay with being emotionally vulnerable. No longer being defensive and taking on everything on your own, but allowing someone else to do the work, or allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to be, and potentially have a new relationship with someone. But you guys have surrendered to complete healing from the Power Surrender card, and it says, open fully to the loving, compassionate forces of the universe that support your physical, emotional, and spiritual healing.